The year was 1894. It was a night where the fog of London did not merely sit upon the streets. It seemed to press against the very windows of 221B Baker Street, like a living thing. November, if my memory serves me correctly. The fire in our sitting room was blazing cheerfully, fighting a losing battle against the damp chill that seeped through the walls. Sherlock Holmes sat in his favorite armchair, his eyes closed, his long, thin fingers pressing together in that familiar gesture of deep concentration. On his lap lay his Stradivarius violin, silent for now, though moments ago he had been playing a melancholic tune that seemed to weep along with the rain outside. "Boredom, Watson," he murmured without opening his eyes. "It is a dangerous thing for a mind like mine. The criminal world seems to have gone into hibernation with the winter." I lowered my newspaper. "Surely, Holmes, a quiet night is a welcome change." "Quiet is strictly for the grave, my dear fellow," he replied sharply, finally opening his grey, piercing eyes. Just then, a knock echoed from the street door below. Mrs. Hudson's footsteps could be heard hurrying down the hall. A moment later, our door opened. A young woman stood there, shivering, her coat soaked with rain. She looked terrified. "Mr. Holmes," she gasped, "please, you must help me." Holmes stood and gestured to the warm chair by the fire. "Come in, miss." "Ilara Vance," she said, taking a seat. "I work as an archivist at the old Blackwood Manor." "And you have come," Holmes said, observing her closely, not because of a theft, but because of a sound. "Mud on your boots suggests you ran part of the way, but your gloves are stained with graphite and grease. You were near machinery before you left." Miss Vance stared at him in amazement. "Yes, how did you—" "Trifles," Holmes waved a hand dismissively. "Tell us of the sound, Miss Vance." "It is the music box," she whispered. "Blackwood Manor has a collection of antique music boxes. There is one, a silver box from the 17th century, that has been broken for 50 years. The gears are rusted solid. But tonight, Mr. Holmes, as I was cataloguing the library, it began to play." I leaned forward. "Perhaps a draft of wind moved the mechanism." "No, Dr. Watson." She shook her head, her eyes wide. "It didn't just play a tune. It played a melody that shouldn't exist. And then the lights in the manor went out. When I lit a candle, the box was gone. Vanished from a locked room." Holmes's eyes gleamed with that familiar hunting light. A locked room, a broken machine that sings, and a thief who strikes in the dark. "Watson, your coat!" "The game is afoot." The journey to Blackwood Manor was silent. The carriage rattled over the cobblestones of London, moving deeper into the foggy outskirts. I watched the gas lamps flicker past, blurring in the rain. When we arrived, the manor stood like a dark beast against the night sky. It was an ancient, sprawling estate filled with shadows. Miss Vance led us to the library, a massive room smelling of old paper and dust. "It was here." She pointed to an empty velvet cushion on a pedestal. "The door was locked from the inside. I was the only one here. The window is painted shut. It hasn't been opened in a decade." Holmes began his examination. He took out his magnifying glass, dropping to his knees to inspect the floor. He moved like a bloodhound, silent and focused. "Interesting," Holmes muttered. "Look here, Watson. No footprints in the dust near the pedestal. Whoever took the box did not walk to it." "A ghost?" Miss Vance trembled. "There are no ghosts, Miss Vance." Holmes stood up. "Only clever men hoping to be mistaken for them." Holmes walked to the bookshelf directly behind the pedestal. He pulled a specific book, a thick encyclopedia. As he did, a faint click resonated in the room. "The thief was never in the room, Watson," Holmes declared. "Observe." He pushed the bookshelf aside. Behind it was not a wall, but a hollow space, a service shaft used by servants centuries ago. And there, hanging by a thin fishing line, dangled the missing silver music box. "But how did it play?" Miss Vance asked. "It didn't," Holmes explained, lifting the box gently. "The sound you heard was a trick. A small phonograph hidden in the vent, triggered to play a recording to terrify you, to make you flee the room, so the thief could pull the box up through this shaft at his leisure." "But who?" I asked. Holmes turned, his eyes locking onto the shadows of the doorway. "Why don't we ask the manor's caretaker, Mr. Griggs? I noticed the same grease on his hands that I saw on your gloves earlier. Miss Vance, grease from the pulley system in this very shaft. We found Mr. Griggs attempting to flee through the back garden, but the mystery was already solved. Back at Baker Street, the fire had burned low. Holmes sat again in his chair, lighting his pipe. The smoke curled upward in lazy spirals. A simple case, really, Holmes mused, but atmospheric. The villain relied on fear. He knew that in a dark, lonely house, the mind invents ghosts where there are only gears and pulleys. You solved it in minutes, I said, pouring us both a cup of warm tea. I observed, Holmes corrected. Most people look, but they do not observe. He picked up his violin once more. Now, Watson, if you would be so kind as to listen. I believe I shall play something to help us sleep. The rain is heavy tonight. As the sweet, sharp notes of the violin filled the room, pushing back the London fog and the night, I closed my eyes. The mystery was solved. The world was safe again. And at 221B Baker Street, it was finally time to rest.